In the sport this morning, because there was another big game in the Premier League last night, Sal, but it's actually what happened just before that in the sky above the Etihad, which everyone is talking about this morning.
That's right, the result completely overshadowed by a plane that flew in the sky above the Etihad last night as Manchester City played Burnley. Burnley say they are ashamed and embarrassed after that banner reading "White Lives Matter Burnley" was flown over the Etihad Stadium during their game with Manchester City. The aircraft circled over the stadium just before kick-off, around about the time that the players and staff from both sides had taken a knee. It was timed to coincide with that moment in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, Burnley lost the game 5-0, say they will ban those responsible and have issued an apology.
Welcome to the video, guys. As you just see there, the utter embarrassment that is the Premier League and its hypocritical political stance is out there for all to see now. And the BBC are back to their usual tricks, misrepresenting what people have actually said and claiming something completely different, pushing their narrative, calling this banner offensive, which is just nonsensical if you ask me. There's nothing offensive about it. If there is nothing offensive about there being BLM banners and graffiti all over the place, which I feel I need to remind everyone, graffiti is actually against the law, as we're obviously flying a banner that says "White Lives Matter Burnley" is clearly not. Now, as I said, the media have tried their hardest this morning to try and frame this in some sort of way, like the person behind it is essentially the devil, which is just complete nonsense. He has actually come out and said he does not apologise, he stands by what he did, and I will not bend the fucking knee, which I have to say I fully respect and stand behind. In my opinion, what has happened here has shown the media, the Premier League, and all of these woke companies for the hypocritical fuckpigs that they all are. Most of us who keep track of what is going on already knew this, but there is certainly a lot of other people now that will be watching on the TV, seeing these broadcasters pumping this crap out while also thinking, hold on a minute, you've been screaming about BLM all month, so why is it not okay for someone to do this? Which is a perfectly reasonable position to have. Imagine next week someone flies over with an Asian Lives Matter banner. Will they shit the proverbial bed as they have now? I expect they wouldn't, but it would be god tier trolling. As I said on Twitter yesterday, if someone starts a GoFundMe page to get banners flown over every single Premier League match, I will promote it because, as I've said, it will be god tier trolling and salt mining on a whole new level. Now, before we take a look at some hypocritical and downright stupid BBC clips, if you haven't already, come and join me on the Parler app. It is a free speech alternative to Twitter where they will not ban you for having an opinion they do not like. The link will be down in the video description. You can download Parler from the Android or iOS stores or use it on a computer via an internet browser. The link will be in the description, as will my handle, so you can give me a follow. But back to the utter joke that is the Premier League, the media, and everyone on Twitter who is screaming about how offensive this is. Let's take a look at our first clip from the BBC this morning.
Actually, what happened just before that in the sky above the Etihad, which everyone is talking about this morning.
That's right, the result completely overshadowed by a plane that flew in the sky above the Etihad last night as Manchester City played Burnley. Burnley say they are ashamed and embarrassed after that banner reading "White Lives Matter Burnley" was flown over the Etihad Stadium during their game with Manchester City. The aircraft circled over the stadium just before kick-off, around about the time that the players and staff from both sides had taken a knee. It was timed to coincide with that moment in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, Burnley lost the game 5-0, say they will ban those responsible and have issued an apology.
So there you see it. Burnley, as expected, bent the knee within about 40 minutes of this happening. And as you heard there, the BBC host is trying her best to belittle the banner while promoting the BLM cause, which I think you will agree is contradictory and not being impartial as the BBC are supposed to be. They are taking one political stance over another political stance, though technically I don't think the banner is really a political stance. It's more of a point, given what has happened in recent days, and a great way to expose the media, these companies, and of course the Premier League for the hypocritical fuckpigs that they all are. Now, let's move on to another clip, who is actually a guy from the PFA, who says it's not that offensive, there's nothing wrong with the words, complains about context, but essentially says people have the right to do what they want, which I would 100% agree with. Now, pay attention to what some of this guy says, because afterwards the BBC will completely misquote what he said and ignore a few vital points that he made. So, let's check it out.
I mean, in itself, the words themselves aren't offensive. It's just the context. It's actually rejection, obviously, of the conversations we're all having at the moment. That's what it represents. And I guess people have the right to do it. And, you know, people, you know, for all the, you know, great things that have been said, people ought to take guilt or responsibility for the minds of actions of people like that. For me, I think just proof again that these things can lead to positive things, because all that's been said, you know, even the 12 hours since the game's finished, has been, again, another catalyst and other conversations out. I think the big thing is that we're just at such a transformative point now in the year and in football, all that's gone on, that this just expands it again and just hopefully leads to more conversations. And like I said, for everyone out there, these are uncomfortable conversations, and we've got to have them. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Be comfortable being uncomfortable.
That is Ife Anora from the Professional Footballers Association explaining his feelings about that banner that flew over the Etihad last night. He's saying very clearly it's an uncomfortable situation. We've got to keep having these conversations.
Right, so he starts off saying that the words are not offensive, which of course they're not. If you can say that White Lives Matter is offensive, then the same can be said for Black Lives Matter, which obviously the BBC are never going to say. He talks about context, but I think he has got the context wrong. The context is obviously in relation to what happened a few days ago, and obviously the media, political class, and every other snivelling shitweasel who is running around screaming about BLM while calling anyone who disagrees with them a bigot. This is why people are doing this. Let me tell you, the silent majority does not support what the media are pushing, and I think this guy might actually understand that to some degree, because as you heard with the rest of it, he is very careful with what he is saying. Maybe he doesn't want to turn too many fans against the Premier League, which I would have to say is a very smart move, because the media and the Premier League itself, I'm sure, are turning away plenty of supporters. I have seen anecdotal reports from many people saying they have had enough and will no longer watch the football. As to whether they will or not is another matter, but it doesn't look good considering the way the media are going on. Like I said though, you also heard him say people have the right to do it and other people should not feel guilty because someone decided to do this. As many people have said, don't drink the white guilt, which is also what this guy is saying. No one should be taking responsibility for the actions of others, especially when there is nothing wrong with what he done. Please, someone point to a law that this man has broken. I will wait, because I'm pretty sure there is not one. But you heard him essentially say he doesn't care about the banner. He thinks it's actually a good thing from what I could tell, because it starts another conversation, which the conversation will be framed by the media in a way that anyone who supports the White Lives Matter banner will be considered a racist, even though they are not. And he even says there's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable, which clearly the BBC do not agree with, as we will see by the misreporting of some of the things he has said. I mean, you can actually tell at the end there that she is struggling to frame it in a way that doesn't actually represent what he has said. But let's move on. We got a couple of more clips to look through yet.
From Burnley Football Club this morning, they are saying they will ban any fans found to be behind the flying of a banner which said White Lives Matter Burnley. If you're watching the football last night, you might have seen that during the match against Manchester City.
The message was actually towed by an aircraft just moments after the players had knelt in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Sally has been speaking to people throughout the programme about this morning. Morning.
Morning to you. Yeah, plenty of reaction last night. Quick reaction from Burnley, quick reaction from the players, but also this morning, as you said, we've heard from the PFA talking about why it's important that this does not happen, why the message that was flown on that banner across the Etihad is so damaging. Just at this point that we feel that the Black Lives Matter movement is having such huge support from football in particular and from sport in general.
Well, there you hear it. Which part of the clip from the PFA did he say this message is damaging? No, he says it's fine. He says people can do what they want, and it's also good to have a conversation that might make people uncomfortable. I don't know where this BBC bin is getting this bullshit from, but I'm sure you would agree she is definitely reaching for the sky. Now, I do feel I have to point out, when she talks about BLM support, she does not mention it has a lot of public support. She only mentions it has support within the football system, not actually the football fan base, which I'm sure you would agree is the most important thing. It is a crying shame that there was not a crowd there present when this plane flew over to gauge the reaction of the crowd in the stands, because I feel the BBC, Burnley Football Club and the Premier League wouldn't be able to run around screaming this bullshit if the entire stadium erupted in applause when the plane flew over, which I expect it actually would. But there we have, as you would all expect, the BBC misrepresenting what someone had said. And as I'm sure most of you have noticed, the one guy who says this is not offensive and doesn't seem that bothered by it is actually the black guy. Imagine my shock. White people offended, black man not offended at all, and says people have the right to do what they want. Now, let's move on to the next clip, where we hear from a Burnley captain who not only bends the knee like an absolute cuck, but tries to blame the banner for the reason why they lost 5-0 like a complete and utter snivelling shitweasel.
Really interesting last night that the Burnley captain, Ben Mee, was asked immediately after the game, which was a 5-0 defeat, about the match itself, and he said he didn't want to talk about that yet. He needed to get something off his chest about what had happened and this banner.
Sure, it made a big impact on our players. We, as a group of players, condemn it. We're ashamed. We're embarrassed. Completely misses the point of what we're trying to achieve as a football community, as a group of players. And as a group of players, we're really ashamed, and it's a minority of our supporters. And I will speak for the main part of our supporters that absolutely, distance ourselves from any sort of thing like that. It's a real shame to see, and it definitely had a massive impact on us to see that in the sky.
And isn't that an interesting point that he ends on there, that it had an impact on the players themselves? They were beaten 5-0, and he mentioned it more than once in interviews last night, that what they had seen certainly bothered them and affected their performance on the pitch.
Well, you heard him sit there and say how ashamed he is and claims it's a minority of supporters. I really wouldn't bank on that, sweetheart. I think you will find it's going to be more than a minority who feel this way. They don't think Premier League clubs should be running around saying Black Lives Matter because it's a political statement at the end of the day. Companies, football clubs and anything else should stay well out of it, as they have always done in other political matters. Take a look at the Poppy situation a few years ago and what happened in relation to that. It's amazing how that is completely forgotten about for BLM and everything is perfectly fine, rushed through, put on the back of shirts and all kinds of crap. But the true peach of it is when you hear a professional football player sit there and claim that a banner flown over in the sky affected his performance and caused them to lose. He said that, as the BBC host pointed out towards the end, more than once, trying his hardest to make excuses for Burnley's piss-poor performance against Manchester City yesterday, where they actually lost 5-0. Sorry, you cannot blame a fucking banner flying over the stadium for the reason why you lost, while also calling out your own fans who are just pointing out something that you all seem to be forgetting. Especially, as I've said many times, considering what happened only a couple of days before, which the BBC conveniently left out of every part of their reporting. What a fucking surprise that is not. Now, I think you would all agree it's an utter disgrace what the BBC are doing, and Burnley should change their names to Cuck FC, if you ask me. This BBC Sports presenter is an absolute joke. I don't know about you guys, but to me it seems like the BBC are taking a political stance on something, despite it being mandated that they remain impartial on political matters. I, for one, will be complaining about this, that is for sure. Now, as always, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who supports the channel, and my other social media links are down in the video description if you want to come and support me on Twitter, BitChute and a variety of other platforms, including my second YouTube channel. As I said, all links are down in the video description.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.